The restaurant had emptied out an hour ago. The waiters had stopped coming to their table. The candles had burned down to small puddles of wax. And Jonathan Pierce, the man worth $4 billion, the man whose face appeared on magazine covers, the man who had everything anyone could ever want, sat across from Amara Johnson with tears streaming down his face. His hands trembled as they gripped the bottom of his crisp white dress shirt. His jaw was tight. His blue eyes, which had sparkled with confidence all evening, now held nothing but fear and shame. "I need to show you something," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "And when I do, you're going to want to leave. Everyone does." Amara leaned forward in her seat. Her red silk blouse caught the dim light as she moved. She had known this man for only 4 hours. 4 hours of conversation. 4 hours of laughter. 4 hours of feeling something she had not felt in years. And now he looked like a man about to face his execution. "Jonathan," she said softly. "Whatever it is, you can tell me." He shook his head. "No. I have to show you. Words are not enough." And then, slowly, painfully, he lifted his shirt. Amara's breath caught in her throat. Not from disgust. Not from fear. But from the sheer magnitude of what she was seeing. His torso was covered in scars. Thick, raised, twisted scars that stretched from his waist up to his chest and wrapped around his sides. The skin was mottled in patches of pink and white and deep red. Some areas were smooth and tight. Others were rough and textured like tree bark. It looked like someone had taken a torch to his body and let it burn. 3 years ago, Jonathan said, his voice cracking, there was a fire. My nephew was trapped inside. He was 7 years old. I ran in. I got him out. But the ceiling collapsed on me. I was in the hospital for 8 months. 23 surgeries. Skin grafts. Infections. They told me I would never walk again. I proved them wrong. But this, he gestured to his body, this I cannot fix. This is permanent. He lowered his shirt, but he could not meet her eyes. I have been on 37 dates in the last 2 years, he continued. Every single woman left the moment they saw. Some of them ran. Some of them made excuses. One of them actually laughed. Said I looked like a monster. Said she could never be intimate with something like that. The tears fell faster now. So I stopped trying. I stopped dating. I stopped hoping. Because no one wants to date a man who looks like this under his clothes. No matter how much money he has. No matter how nice he is. No matter how much he tries. The moment they see the truth, they leave. He finally looked up at her. His eyes were red and swollen. His face was a mask of defeat. So you can go now, he said. I will have my driver take you home. I will pay for everything. I will not bother you again. I just wanted you to know before you found out some other way. I wanted to give you the choice. Amara sat very still. The silence stretched between them like a living thing. Jonathan closed his eyes, bracing himself for the sound of her chair pushing back, for the click of her heels on the marble floor, for the polite excuse or the cruel comment or the awkward goodbye. Instead, he felt something warm touch his hand. He opened his eyes. Amara had reached across the table. Her fingers intertwined with his. Her brown eyes, deep and warm and steady, looked directly into his soul. I am not going anywhere, she said. Jonathan blinked. What? I said I am not going anywhere. Her voice was calm. Certain. Unshaken. You saved a child's life. You ran into a burning building to save someone you love. Those scars are not ugly, Jonathan. Those scars are proof that you are a hero. And any woman who cannot see that does not deserve you. Jonathan stared at her like she had spoken in a foreign language. You are not leaving? He asked, his voice filled with disbelief. No. You are not disgusted? No. You do not think I am a monster? Amara squeezed his hand tighter. I think you are the bravest man I have ever met. And I think this is only our first date. I would very much like to have a second one. If you are willing. For the first time in 3 years, Jonathan Pierce smiled. A real smile. A smile that reached his eyes and lit up his entire face. I would like that very much, he whispered. And in that moment, in that empty restaurant with the burned-down candles and the cold food and the tear-stained tablecloth, something beautiful was born. But we are getting ahead of ourselves. Because this story does not start in a restaurant. This story starts 3 days earlier in a small apartment across town, where a woman named Amara Johnson was about to receive a phone call that would change her life forever. But before we continue, I have a question for you. Have you ever judged someone before knowing their story? Have you ever looked at someone and assumed you knew everything about them based on what you could see? Have you ever walked away from someone because they did not fit your idea of perfect? If this story is touching your heart, If you want to see where Amara and Jonathan's journey leads, then hit that subscribe button right now. Drop a comment below and tell me, would you have stayed? Or would you have walked away? Your support means everything. And trust me, this story is just getting started. Now let us go back to where it all began. 3 days earlier, Amara Johnson was standing in her small kitchen, stirring a pot of soup that she had no intention of eating. The television played softly in the background. Rain tapped against the window. And her phone buzzed for the 14th time in the last hour. She knew who it was without looking. Denise Carter, her best friend since college, had been on a mission for the past 6 months. That mission was simple: get Amara back into the dating world. And Denise did not take no for an answer. Amara sighed and picked up the phone. Before you say anything, Denise's voice burst through the speaker. Just hear me out. I know you said no more blind dates. I know you said you were done. I know you said you were happy being single. But this one is different. You said that about the last 3, Amara replied, turning off the stove. She was wearing her favorite blue sweater and gray sweatpants. Her curly hair was pulled up in a messy bun. She had just finished a 12-hour shift at the hospital, and the last thing she wanted to think about was dating. I know. But Amara, listen to me. This guy is not like the others. He is successful. He is kind. He donates millions to charity. He is actually a good person. And my coworker Patricia works for him directly. She says he is the most genuine man she has ever met. Amara carried her phone to the couch and sat down heavily. Denise, I appreciate what you are trying to do. But I am tired. I spent the last 2 years dating men who turned out to be liars, cheaters, and commitment-phobic children in adult bodies. I am done putting myself out there just to get hurt again. This is different, Denise insisted. Patricia has been trying to set him up for months. He keeps refusing. But when she showed him your picture from my Instagram, he actually said yes. He said you had kind eyes. He said you looked genuine. Amara, this man has women throwing themselves at him daily, and he said no to all of them. But he said yes to you. Amara paused. Why would he say no to everyone else? There was a brief hesitation on the other end of the line. Patricia did not say exactly. Just that he has been through something difficult and he is very selective about who he spends time with. But she promised me he is a good man. A really, really good man. Amara stared at the ceiling of her apartment. The paint was starting to peel in the corner. The radiator made a clicking sound every few minutes. She was 28 years old, worked 60 hours a week as a registered nurse, and had not been on a date in 9 months. What is his name? She finally asked. Denise squealed so loud that Amara had to hold the phone away from her ear. Jonathan Pierce. He is the CEO of Pierce Tech Industries. And before you Google him, just promise me you will go in with an open mind. Do not let his success intimidate you. Patricia says he is nothing like what you would expect. Pierce Tech Industries, Amara repeated slowly. That is a billion-dollar company. 4 billion actually. But who is counting? Amara felt her stomach tighten. Denise, why would a billionaire want to go on a date with a nurse from Brooklyn? Because you are not just a nurse from Brooklyn, Denise said firmly. You are smart. You are beautiful. You are compassionate. You spend your days saving lives and your nights volunteering at the community center. You are exactly the kind of woman a good man should want to be with. Do not sell yourself short. Amara was quiet for a long moment. One date, she finally said. One dinner. And if it is terrible, you are never setting me up again. Deal? Deal. I love you. You will not regret this. They hung up, and Amara sat in the silence of her apartment, wondering what she had just agreed to. Across town, in a penthouse that overlooked the entire city, Jonathan Pierce was having a similar conversation. Sir, I really think you should consider this, Patricia Keller said, standing in front of his massive oak desk. She was a small woman in her 50s with gray hair and sharp eyes. She had worked for Jonathan for 15 years and was one of the few people who knew his full story. Jonathan did not look up from his laptop. I told you, Patricia. I'm done with dating. It never ends well. You have not tried in over a year. And there is a reason for that. Patricia moved closer. I have seen this woman's profile. Her name is Amara Johnson. She is a registered nurse. She volunteers with children on weekends. Her friend Denise works in our marketing department and speaks very highly of her. She is not like the others. Jonathan finally looked up. His blue eyes were tired. That is what you said about Miranda. And Claire. And Stephanie. And every other woman who ran the moment they saw what I really look like. Those women were shallow, Patricia said quietly. They were interested in your money and your status. Amara is different. I can feel it. You cannot possibly know that. No. But I know you. And I know that you have been alone for too long. You deserve someone who sees you, not just what you own. And I think she might be that person. Jonathan leaned back in his chair. He was wearing a navy blue suit with a green tie. His brown hair was slightly messy, as it always was when he had been working too long. He looked out the window at the city lights below. What if she is like the others? He asked, his voice barely audible. Then at least you will know. But what if she is not? What if she is exactly what you have been waiting for? Jonathan was silent for a very long time. One date, he finally said. Arrange it. But keep my identity private as long as possible. I do not want her to know who I am until she has to. Patricia smiled. I will take care of everything. She turned to leave, but Jonathan's voice stopped her. Patricia? Yes, sir? Thank you. For not giving up on me. Her smile softened. Never, sir. Never. The restaurant was called Lumiere. It sat on the top floor of one of the oldest buildings in Manhattan, with floor-to-ceiling windows that offered a view of the entire skyline. The tables were covered in white linen. Crystal chandeliers hung from the ceiling. Soft music played from invisible speakers. Amara had never been anywhere so fancy in her entire life. She stood at the entrance in her red silk blouse and black slacks, her curly hair falling softly around her shoulders. She had spent 2 hours getting ready, changing outfits 4 times and nearly canceling twice. But she was here now, and there was no turning back. The hostess led her to a private table in the corner of the restaurant. A man was already sitting there, his back to the room, looking out the window at the city below. Your guest has arrived, Mr. Pierce, the hostess said softly, then disappeared. The man stood and turned. Amara felt her breath catch. He was handsome. Not in a polished, perfect magazine way, but in a real way. His brown hair was slightly disheveled. His blue eyes held a mixture of nervousness and warmth. He was tall and broad-shouldered, wearing a crisp white shirt with a maroon tie. And when he smiled at her, there was something almost vulnerable in it. You must be Amara, he said, extending his hand. I am Jonathan. It is really wonderful to meet you. She shook his hand. His grip was firm but gentle. It is nice to meet you too. This place is incredible. He pulled out her chair for her and she sat down, feeling like she had stepped into a movie. I hope I did not overwhelm you with the choice of restaurant, he said, taking his own seat. I know it is a bit much. But I wanted somewhere quiet where we could actually talk. It is beautiful, she admitted. I have never been anywhere like this. Then I am glad I could be the one to bring you. He smiled again and she noticed that it did not quite reach his eyes. There was something guarded there. Something held back. The waiter came and they ordered. Amara chose the salmon. Jonathan chose the steak. And then they were alone, with nothing between them but white linen and candlelight. So, Jonathan said, folding his hands on the table, Denise tells me you are a nurse. That is right. I work in the pediatric ward at Brooklyn General. I have been there for 5 years now. You work with children? Mostly. The sick ones. The ones who need the most care. She shrugged. It is hard sometimes. But it is also the most rewarding thing I have ever done. Jonathan leaned forward slightly, genuinely interested. What made you choose nursing? Amara thought for a moment. My grandmother was sick when I was young. She had cancer. And I watched the nurses take care of her. Not just physically but emotionally. They held her hand when she was scared. They made her laugh when she was sad. They treated her like a person, not just a patient. And I thought, that is what I want to do. I want to be the person who makes someone feel less alone during the worst time of their life. Jonathan was quiet for a moment. That is beautiful, he said softly. Most people choose careers based on money or status. You chose yours based on compassion. What about you? Amara asked. What made you go into tech? Something flickered in his eyes. A shadow. A memory. My father started the company when I was a child. He died when I was 22. Heart attack. Very sudden. I took over because there was no one else. And I have been running it ever since. I am sorry about your father. Thank you. It was a long time ago. But I still miss him every day. The food arrived and they ate in comfortable silence for a while. Amara found herself relaxing. This was not what she had expected. She had expected arrogance. She had expected someone who talked about himself constantly, who showed off his wealth, who treated her like she should be grateful for his attention. Instead, she found a man who listened more than he spoke, who asked questions and actually cared about the answers, who looked at her like she was the most interesting person in the room. Can I ask you something? She said, setting down her fork. Anything. Why did you agree to this date? Your assistant said you do not date much. Jonathan's hand tightened slightly around his glass of water. That is true. I have not dated seriously in a long time. Why not? He was quiet for so long that she thought he might not answer. Then he said, there are things about me that make dating difficult. Things that are hard to explain. Things that tend to make people uncomfortable. Amara tilted her head. Like what? I'm not ready to talk about it yet. Not tonight. But I will tell you this, Amara. I agreed to this date because Patricia showed me your picture and I saw something in your eyes. Something real. Something kind. And I thought maybe, just maybe, you might be different. Different from what? Different from everyone else. Amara did not know what to say to that. So she simply nodded and let the moment pass. They talked for another 2 hours. About everything and nothing. About favorite movies and childhood memories and places they wanted to travel. About her parents and his sister and the nephew he adored. About dreams and fears and the things that kept them awake at night. By the time the restaurant began to empty, Amara realized she did not want the evening to end. I had a wonderful time, she said as they stood to leave. So did I. Jonathan hesitated. Amara, there is something I need to tell you. Something important. But I do not want to do it here. What is it? Can we go somewhere more private? There is a garden on the roof. It is quiet. And what I have to say, I need to say without an audience. Amara felt a flutter of nervousness, but also curiosity, and something else she could not quite name. Okay, she said. Lead the way. The rooftop garden was unlike anything Amara had ever seen. Despite being in the heart of Manhattan, it felt like a secret world hidden above the chaos of the city. Trees and flowers grew in carefully arranged planters. Soft white lights were strung between wooden beams. Stone benches were scattered throughout, offering places to sit and look at the stars. Jonathan led her to a bench near the edge, where they could see the entire skyline stretched out before them like a sea of lights. This is yours? Amara asked, looking around in wonder. It belongs to the restaurant, but I donated the money to build it. After my father died, I wanted to create something beautiful in the city. Something peaceful. So I gave them the funds to build this, with the condition that it would always be open to anyone who needed a moment of quiet. Amara sat down on the bench and Jonathan sat beside her, leaving a respectful distance between them. It is beautiful, she said. I come here sometimes. When everything feels like too much. When I need to remember why any of it matters. They sat in silence for a moment, listening to the distant sounds of traffic far below. The air was cool but not cold. Amara pulled her blazer tighter around her shoulders. You said you wanted to tell me something, she prompted gently. Jonathan nodded slowly. I do. But first, I want to ask you something. Okay. What do you know about me? Before tonight, I mean. Did you look me up? Amara hesitated. I did not, actually. Denise told me your name and that you were a CEO. But I decided I did not want to know anything else. I wanted to meet you as a person, not as a profile. Jonathan let out a breath that sounded almost like relief. That is rare. Most people research everything they can before a date. They know my net worth, my properties, my dating history, every article ever written about me. I am not most people. He looked at her, then really looked at her, and something shifted in his expression. The guardedness that had been there all evening began to crack. No, he said softly. You are not. Another moment of silence. Then he spoke again. 3 years ago, my sister Rebecca called me in the middle of the night. Her house was on fire. Her son Tyler, my nephew, was trapped in his bedroom on the 2nd floor. The firefighters had not arrived yet. She was screaming his name, but she could not get to him. Amara's heart began to pound. I was staying at her house that weekend. I was in the guest room downstairs when I heard her screaming. I ran outside and I saw the flames coming out of Tyler's window. I could hear him crying for help. Jonathan's hands clenched into fists on his knees. His voice was steady, but Amara could see the effort it took to keep it that way. I did not think. I just acted. I ran back inside. The stairs were on fire, but I went up anyway. I found Tyler in his closet, hiding from the smoke. I grabbed him. I wrapped him in a wet towel from his bathroom. I got him to the window and threw him onto the lawn below. Rebecca caught him. And then? Amara whispered. And then the ceiling collapsed on me. The words hung in the air between them. I was trapped for 7 minutes before the firefighters pulled me out. The flames were on me the entire time. I was burned over 40% of my body. My legs. My stomach. My chest. My back. Amara felt tears prick her eyes, but she stayed silent. This was his story to tell. I spent 8 months in the hospital. 23 surgeries. Skin grafts. Infections that nearly killed me twice. Physical therapy that felt like torture. But I survived. And Tyler survived. He did not have a single burn on his body. Jonathan, Amara breathed. But the scars, he continued, his voice breaking slightly. The scars are permanent. They are extensive. They are, according to the 37 women who have seen them, disgusting. Horrifying. Unlovable. He turned to face her fully. That is why I do not date Amara. Because every woman I have ever been with has left the moment they saw what I look like underneath my clothes. They say the right things at first. They say they do not care. They say it does not matter. But then they see and everything changes. The looks of pity. The poorly hidden disgust. The excuses about why they need to leave. His eyes were glistening now. I brought you up here because I like you. I like you more than I have liked anyone in a very long time. And I could not let this go any further without being honest. So if you want to leave, I understand. I have a car waiting downstairs. I will pay for everything. I will not bother you again. But I needed you to know the truth before you made any decisions. He fell silent. Amara did not move. She thought about everything he had just told her. About the fire. About Tyler. About the scars. About the women who had left. About the loneliness he must have felt. About the courage it took to tell her all of this on a first date. And she made her decision. Jonathan, she said, reaching out to take his hand. Can I tell you something? He looked at her, bracing himself. I have been a nurse for 5 years. I have seen bodies in every condition you can imagine. I have held the hands of burn victims. I have changed the bandages of people who lost limbs. I have looked at wounds that most people cannot even imagine. And do you know what I have learned? He shook his head. Scars are not ugly. They are proof of survival. They are evidence that something terrible happened and you kept going anyway. They are marks of strength, not weakness. She squeezed his hand tighter. What those women saw when they looked at you, that was their failure, not yours. They saw surface. They saw skin. They did not see what I see. What do you see? He asked, his voice barely audible. I see a man who ran into a burning building to save a child. I see a man who endured unimaginable pain and came out the other side. I see a man who has every reason to be bitter and closed off, but who sat across from me tonight and asked genuine questions and actually listened to my answers. I see a man worth knowing. A tear slipped down Jonathan's cheek. You are not going to leave? Amara smiled. I am not going anywhere. Jonathan stared at her for a long moment, as if waiting for her to change her mind. As if waiting for the punchline of a cruel joke. But Amara simply sat there, holding his hand, looking at him with those warm brown eyes that held no judgment. No pity. Just quiet acceptance. I do not understand, he finally said. Everyone leaves. That is just how it is. Not everyone. Not me. How can you be so certain? You have not even seen them yet. Amara took a deep breath. Do you remember what I told you earlier? About why I became a nurse? He nodded. My grandmother was in the hospital for 3 years before she died. Cancer ate away at her body piece by piece. By the end, she did not look anything like the woman I grew up with. She had lost her hair. Her weight. Her color. Some of the nurses and doctors, they would come into her room and barely look at her. Like she was not a person anymore. Like she was just a collection of symptoms and statistics. Amara's voice trembled slightly, but she continued. But there was one nurse. Her name was Barbara. And every single day Barbara would come in and she would look my grandmother in the eye. She would hold her hand. She would tell her stories. She would brush what was left of her hair. She treated her like she was still the same person she had always been. And when I asked her how she could do that, how she could look past all the sickness and decay, do you know what she said? Jonathan shook his head. She said, the body is just a container. What matters is the person inside. And your grandmother is still the same beautiful soul she has always been. Her body just tells a different story now. Amara looked at Jonathan with fierce certainty. Your body tells a story too, Jonathan. It tells the story of a hero. It tells the story of a man who chose love over safety, who chose his nephew over himself, who endured hell and kept breathing. That is not something to hide. That is not something to be ashamed of. That is something to honor. Jonathan was crying openly now. Not sobbing. Just silent tears streaming down his face. He had not cried in front of anyone in years. Not since the hospital. Not since the rehabilitation. Not since the last woman walked out of his life and he decided that being alone was easier than being rejected. I do not know what to say, he whispered. You do not have to say anything. Just let me see you. All of you. Whenever you are ready. He looked at her for a long time. And then, slowly he reached for the buttons of his shirt. Amara did not look away as he undid each button. She did not flinch as he pulled the fabric apart. She did not gasp or grimace or turn her head when he revealed what lay beneath. The scars were extensive. They covered his torso from his waist to his collarbones. Some were smooth and tight, pulling his skin into unnatural shapes. Others were rough and textured, like melted wax frozen in place. The colors ranged from pale pink to deep red to white. It was clear that multiple surgeries had been performed, multiple grafts attempted, but the damage was too severe to fully repair. Amara looked. She really looked. She took in every ridge and valley, every patch of damaged skin, every mark left by the fire and the surgeries and the endless healing. And then she reached out and placed her hand flat against his chest, right over his heart. "Thank you for showing me," she said simply. Jonathan let out a sound that was half laugh, half sob. "You are not disgusted?" "No." "You do not think I am hideous?" "No." "You are not going to make an excuse and leave?" "No." He covered her hand with his own, pressing it tighter against his chest. Beneath her palm, she could feel his heart pounding. "I have been alone for so long," he said. "I convinced myself it was better that way. That I did not need anyone. That I was fine on my own. But that was a lie. I was not fine. I was just too scared to try again. And now I am still scared. But I am also hopeful. For the first time in 3 years I am actually hopeful." Amara smiled. "That is a good start." Jonathan buttoned his shirt back up, but something had shifted between them. A wall had come down. A bridge had been built. They were no longer strangers on a blind date. They were something more. Something neither of them had expected. "I want to see you again," Jonathan said. "If you are willing." "I am willing." "Soon?" "As soon as you want." He smiled, and this time it reached his eyes. "How about tomorrow?" Amara laughed softly. "Tomorrow sounds perfect." The next 2 weeks felt like a dream. Amara and Jonathan saw each other almost every day. He picked her up after her shifts at the hospital. She visited him at his office during lunch breaks. They walked through parks. They ate at small restaurants where no one recognized him. They talked about everything and nothing. Amara introduced him to Denise, who was so proud of herself for setting them up that she practically glowed. "I told you," Denise said, hugging Amara in her small apartment while Jonathan waited in the living room. "I told you he was different." "You were right," Amara admitted. "He is nothing like I expected." "Does he make you happy?" Amara thought about the question. Happy was not a strong enough word. Jonathan made her feel seen, valued, important. Like she was the only person in the world when he looked at her. "Yes," she said. "He makes me happy." A week later, Jonathan introduced Amara to his family. Rebecca Pierce was a tall woman with the same blue eyes as her brother. She lived in a brownstone in New Jersey, rebuilt after the fire, with her son Tyler. When Amara walked through the door, Rebecca immediately pulled her into a hug. "Jonathan has told me so much about you," Rebecca said, her voice warm. "I cannot thank you enough." "For what?" Amara asked, surprised. "For bringing my brother back to life. He has been different since he met you. Lighter. More like the man he was before the fire. I thought I had lost that version of him forever." Tyler was next. He was a bright-eyed 10-year-old with messy brown hair and boundless energy. He ran up to Amara and looked at her with open curiosity. "Are you Uncle Jonathan's girlfriend?" he asked. Amara looked at Jonathan, who was watching from across the room with a nervous smile. "I think so," she said. "Is that okay with you?" Tyler considered this seriously. "Uncle Jonathan is the best. He saved my life. Anyone who makes him happy is okay with me." Amara felt tears prick her eyes. "That is very sweet of you. Also, he said you work with sick kids. That is really cool. Maybe you can come see my school sometime and talk about it?" "I would love that." The afternoon was perfect. They ate lunch in the backyard. Tyler showed Amara his collection of comic books. Rebecca shared embarrassing stories about Jonathan from their childhood. And Jonathan sat beside Amara on the porch swing, holding her hand, looking more relaxed than she had ever seen him. "Thank you for coming," he said quietly while Tyler ran around the yard chasing butterflies. "Thank you for inviting me. I was scared. I thought maybe meeting my family would be too much. Too fast." "It is not too fast." She leaned her head against his shoulder. "It is just right." The following week, it was Jonathan's turn to be nervous. Amara's parents lived in a modest house in Queens. Her father, Harold Johnson, was a retired construction worker with strong hands and skeptical eyes. Her mother, Gloria Johnson, was a former schoolteacher with a warm smile and an even warmer heart. Jonathan arrived with flowers for Gloria and a bottle of expensive wine that Harold immediately set aside in favor of the beer he always drank. "So you are the billionaire?" Harold said, looking Jonathan up and down. "Yes, sir." "And you are interested in my daughter?" "Yes, sir. Very much." Harold crossed his arms. "Why?" Jonathan did not hesitate. "Because she is the kindest person I have ever met. Because she looks at people and sees their souls, not their surfaces. Because she has made me believe that maybe I deserve to be happy. And because I intend to spend every day proving that I deserve her." Harold was silent for a long moment. Then he grunted. "Good answer. But I am watching you." "I would expect nothing less, sir." Gloria meanwhile pulled Amara into the kitchen. "He is very handsome," she whispered. "Mom? And polite. And clearly crazy about you. The way he looks at you, baby girl, that is the way your father used to look at me." Amara felt her cheeks warm. "It is still early. We have only been dating for 2 weeks. Sometimes you just know. I knew with your father within a month. And I have never been wrong about anything in my life. Except for the time you thought you could cut your own hair." Gloria swatted her arm. "We do not speak of that." Dinner went better than Amara had dared to hope. Harold warmed up slowly, asking Jonathan about his business, his family, his intentions. Gloria asked about his favorite foods, his hobbies, his plans for the future. By the end of the evening, even Harold was smiling. "You take care of my daughter," Harold said as Jonathan and Amara prepared to leave. "I will, sir. I promise." "And you," Harold turned to Amara, "you let him take care of you. You have spent your whole life taking care of everyone else. It is time someone took care of you." Amara hugged her father tightly. "I love you, Dad." "I love you too, baby girl." The weeks continued to pass. Spring melted into early summer. The city bloomed with color and life. And Amara and Jonathan's relationship deepened into something neither of them had expected. They had settled into a comfortable rhythm. Amara would finish her shifts at the hospital and find Jonathan waiting for her in the lobby with coffee and a smile. Jonathan would work late nights at the office and come home to find Amara asleep on his couch, having let herself in with the key he had given her. They cooked dinner together. They watched movies together. They talked about everything and nothing. One evening after a long day, they lay together on the couch in Jonathan's penthouse. Amara wore her favorite green dress. Jonathan was in a simple blue button-down. The city lights sparkled through the floor-to-ceiling windows. "Can I tell you something?" Jonathan murmured against her hair. "Always. I love you." Amara went still. They had not said those words yet. They had danced around them. They had implied them. But neither had been brave enough to say them out loud. "Jonathan," she whispered. "You do not have to say it back. I just needed you to know. I love you, Amara. I love your kindness. I love your strength. I love the way you see the world. I love the way you see me. I have never felt this way about anyone. And I know it has only been a few weeks, but I have never been more certain of anything in my life." Amara turned in his arms so she could look at him. His blue eyes were vulnerable. Open. Waiting. "I love you too," she said. He let out a breath he seemed to have been holding for weeks. "You do." "I do. I did not expect to. I did not plan to. But somewhere between the first date and now, you became the most important person in my life. And I do not want to imagine my life without you in it." He kissed her then. Soft and sweet and full of promise. When they pulled apart he was smiling. A real smile. The kind that made his whole face light up. "I have something I want to give you," he said. "Jonathan, you do not have to give me anything. You have already given me so much. I know I do not have to. But I want to." He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small velvet box. Amara's heart skipped a beat. "It is not what you think," he said quickly, seeing her expression. "Not yet anyway. I do have plans but not tonight." He opened the box. Inside was a delicate gold bracelet with a single charm, a tiny flame. "The fire took so much from me," he said quietly. "My body. My confidence. My ability to trust. But it also gave me something. It gave me Tyler's life. It gave me perspective. And now it has given me you. Because if the fire had not happened, I would not have become the man I am. And I might never have been ready for you." He took the bracelet from the box and clasped it around her wrist. "This is to remind you that even the worst things in life can lead to the best things. And you, Amara Johnson, are the best thing that has ever happened to me." Amara looked at the tiny flame glinting in the light. Tears slipped down her cheeks. "It is beautiful," she whispered. "Not as beautiful as you." She laughed through her tears and kissed him again. As their relationship grew stronger, both families began to blend. Gloria and Rebecca met for coffee and discovered they had both been teachers. Harold and Jonathan found common ground in their love of old movies and strong coffee. Tyler adored Amara and asked constantly when she would come visit again. One Sunday afternoon, everyone gathered at Rebecca's house for a barbecue. The backyard was filled with laughter and conversation. Harold manned the grill while Jonathan assisted. Gloria and Rebecca sat on the porch discussing recipes. Tyler ran around with a water gun, soaking anyone within range. Amara sat on a lawn chair, watching the people she loved most in the world come together. Denise sat beside her, sipping lemonade. "This is insane," Denise said. 2 months ago you were refusing to go on a blind date. Now look at you. I know. Amara shook her head in wonder. It does not feel real sometimes. It is real. And it is beautiful. You deserve this, Amara. You deserve to be happy. Thank you. For pushing me. For not giving up. For making me take that chance. Denise grinned. That is what best friends are for. Jonathan caught Amara's eye from across the yard and smiled. She smiled back, her heart full to bursting. Everything was perfect. Too perfect. Amara should have known that something was coming. That happiness like this always came with a price. That there were people in the world who could not stand to see others succeed. Victor Hawkins was one of those people. He was a businessman roughly Jonathan's age who had been trying to destroy Pierce Tech Industries for years. He had attempted hostile takeovers. He had spread rumors. He had poached employees. But Jonathan had weathered every attack with grace and determination. Victor hated him for it. When Victor learned that Jonathan was in a new relationship, he saw an opportunity. He hired a private investigator to dig into Jonathan's past. And what the investigator found was gold. Hospital records. Photographs from the rehabilitation center. Detailed descriptions of Jonathan's injuries. Victor had everything he needed to destroy Jonathan's reputation. All he had to do was wait for the right moment. The Pierce Tech Industries annual charity gala was the biggest event of the year. Hundreds of the city's most influential people attended. Media coverage was extensive. It was the perfect stage for maximum humiliation. Jonathan received the warning 3 days before the event. He was in his office, reviewing final preparations with Patricia, when his phone buzzed with an unknown number. He answered without thinking. "Mr. Pierce. This is Victor Hawkins. I believe we need to have a conversation." Jonathan's blood ran cold. "What do you want?" "I have something that belongs to you. Well, information about you, to be precise. Medical records. Photographs. Very detailed descriptions of your, shall we say, condition." Jonathan's hand tightened around the phone. "Those records are confidential. Everything has a price, Mr. Pierce. Confidentiality included. What do you want?" "I want you to cancel the gala. And I want you to announce your resignation from Pierce Tech Industries. Do that and these photos never see the light of day. And if I refuse? Then every person at that gala, every reporter, every camera, everyone will see exactly what you have been hiding under those expensive suits. Your scars will be front-page news. Your reputation will be destroyed. And no one will ever look at you the same way again." The line went dead. Jonathan sat in silence for a long moment. Then he told Patricia everything. That evening he told Amara. They sat in his penthouse, the city lights dim against the windows. Jonathan's face was pale. His hands were shaking. He had not touched the dinner Amara had prepared. "I do not know what to do," he admitted. "If I cancel the gala and resign, Victor wins. But if I refuse, he will expose me. Everyone will see. Everyone will know." Amara was quiet for a moment. Then she reached out and took his hands in hers. "Jonathan, look at me." He did. "Those scars are not your weakness. They are your strength. You saved a child's life. You survived something that would have killed most people. And you have built a company that employs thousands of people and does genuine good in the world. But the photos, the reporters, everyone staring. Let them stare. Let them see. And then let them see you stand tall anyway. Let them see that you are not ashamed. That you have nothing to hide. That Victor's cruelty cannot touch you. What if they judge me? Some will. Some people are cruel and shallow and will always choose to see the worst in others. But most people are not like that. Most people will see what I see, a hero. A survivor. A man worthy of respect and admiration." Jonathan looked at her for a long time. "You really believe that?" "I know it. And I will be right beside you the entire night. No matter what happens." He pulled her into his arms and held her tightly. "I do not deserve you," he whispered. Yes, you do. You deserve every good thing that comes your way. And do not let anyone, especially not someone like Victor Hawkins, convince you otherwise. And now, I have another question for you. We are at a turning point in this story. Jonathan is about to face his greatest fear. He is about to stand in front of hundreds of people and risk everything he has built. And the only thing standing between him and destruction is his belief in himself and the love of the woman beside him. But what do you think will happen? Will Victor succeed in destroying Jonathan? Or will love and courage win in the end? Drop your prediction in the comments below. And if you have not subscribed yet, now is the time. Because the final chapters of this story are about to unfold, and you do not want to miss what happens next. The night of the gala arrived. The Grand Monarch Hotel had been transformed into a wonderland of light and elegance. Crystal chandeliers hung from the ceiling. White roses adorned every table. A live orchestra played softly as hundreds of guests mingled in their finest attire. Amara wore a stunning emerald green gown that flowed to the floor and caught the light with every movement. Her hair was styled in elegant curls that framed her face. The gold bracelet with the flame charm glinted at her wrist. Jonathan wore a classic black tuxedo with a deep blue tie. He looked handsome and composed, but Amara could feel the tension in his body as they walked through the entrance together. You look beautiful, he murmured as they paused at the top of the grand staircase. And you look like you are about to face a firing squad. He laughed despite himself. That is about how I feel. Remember what we talked about. Whatever happens tonight, we face it together. Together, he repeated, squeezing her hand. They descended the staircase to a round of applause. Jonathan was the host of the event after all. The man everyone had come to see. The generous billionaire who donated millions to charity and employed thousands of people. The evening began beautifully. Amara met more powerful and influential people in 3 hours than she had in her entire life. Politicians, celebrities, business titans. And every single one of them treated Jonathan with respect and admiration. You see, she whispered during a quiet moment. They love you. They love my money, he replied. But thank you. At 9 o'clock, Jonathan took the stage to deliver his keynote speech. He spoke about the importance of giving back. About the responsibility that came with success. About the charity they were raising money for, a foundation that helped burn victims recover and rebuild their lives. This cause is personal to me, he said, his voice steady. 3 years ago I was involved in a fire. I sustained significant injuries. And without the help of doctors, nurses and support organizations, I would not be standing here today. A murmur rippled through the crowd. Jonathan had never spoken publicly about his injuries before. This was new. Tonight, I want to pledge $5 million to the foundation, Jonathan continued. And I hope that my story, however imperfect, can inspire others to support this cause as well. The applause was thunderous. And that was when Victor Hawkins made his move. From somewhere in the crowd, a projection screen lowered behind Jonathan. And before anyone could react, images began to flash across it. Photographs from the hospital. Jonathan lying in a burn unit bed, bandages covering most of his body. Close-ups of his wounds. His scars in their earliest, rawest form. Gasps echoed through the ballroom. Some people turned away. Others stared in shock. Jonathan froze on stage. For one terrible moment he looked like a man watching his world collapse. His face was pale. His hands trembled at his sides. Everything he had feared, everything he had tried to hide, was now being displayed for hundreds of people to see. Victor Hawkins stepped forward from the crowd, a smug smile on his face. Ladies and gentlemen, Victor announced loudly, I present to you the true Jonathan Pierce. Not the polished businessman you all admire, but a scarred, damaged creature who has been lying to you all along. Ask yourselves, is this the man you want leading your companies? Managing your investments? This monster. The silence was deafening. And then Amara moved. She walked calmly to the stage, her green gown flowing behind her. She climbed the steps and stood beside Jonathan. She took his hand in hers. Turn those off, she said, her voice carrying across the silent ballroom. Someone scrambled to obey. The images vanished. Amara turned to face the crowd. Her heart was pounding, but her voice was steady. My name is Amara Johnson. I am a registered nurse at Brooklyn General Hospital. And I am honored to be standing beside this man tonight. She looked at Jonathan, then back at the crowd. What you just saw were images of a man who ran into a burning building to save his 7-year-old nephew. What you saw were the wounds of a hero. Not a monster. Not something to be ashamed of. Evidence of extraordinary courage. She paused, letting her words sink in. Jonathan Pierce is not damaged. He is not broken. He is one of the bravest, kindest, most generous men I have ever known. And anyone who cannot see that, anyone who would judge him for the marks on his body rather than the content of his character, is not worthy of knowing him. She turned to Victor, who was still standing in the crowd, his smile fading. And as for you, Mr. Hawkins, you thought you could destroy this man by exposing his scars. But all you have done is expose your own cruelty, your own pettiness, your own inability to understand that true worth has nothing to do with what is on the surface. The crowd began to murmur. But this time the murmurs were not of shock or disgust. They were of agreement, of admiration. She is right. The voice came from the back of the room. Rebecca Pierce stepped forward, her blue eyes blazing. My brother saved my son's life. He suffered for months so that a 7-year-old boy could live. Those scars are the price he paid for being a hero. And I will not stand here and let anyone make him feel ashamed of that. More voices joined in. Jonathan donated millions to build the new children's wing at Memorial Hospital. His foundation paid for my daughter's surgery when our insurance ran out. He gave my company its first investment when no one else believed in us. One by one people began to speak. Story after story of Jonathan's generosity, his kindness, his willingness to help those in need. Victor Hawkins looked around the room, his face reddening. The tide had turned. His plan had backfired completely. This is not over, he snarled. Yes, it is. The voice belonged to Harold Johnson, who had been standing quietly near the back with Gloria. You tried to tear down a good man and you failed. Now get out before I help you find the door. Security appeared at Victor's side. Without another word he was escorted from the building. The gala continued, but the atmosphere had transformed. What had been a formal, somewhat stuffy event became something warmer, more genuine. People approached Jonathan not with pity but with respect. They shook his hand. They thanked him for his courage. They pledged even more money to the foundation than had been expected. By the end of the night, the charity had raised over $20 million. Jonathan and Amara sat together at their table, exhausted but elated. The worst had happened and they had survived. More than survived. They had triumphed. I cannot believe what you did, Jonathan said softly. Standing up there. Defending me in front of everyone. I meant every word. I know you did. That is what makes it so incredible. He took her hands in his. Amara, I have been carrying this weight for 3 years. The fear. The shame. The constant worry that someone would find out and use it against me. And in one night, you helped me let it all go. You did that yourself. You chose to speak about the foundation. You chose to be vulnerable. I just stood beside you. You did more than stand beside me. You saved me. They sat in comfortable silence for a moment, watching the last guests filter out of the ballroom. Can I tell you something? Jonathan asked. Always. I had a plan for tonight. Before all of this happened. There was something I wanted to do. Something I wanted to ask you. Amara's heart began to beat faster. What was it? Jonathan stood and offered her his hand. Come with me. He led her out of the ballroom, through a private corridor, and onto a terrace that overlooked the city. The night air was cool and fresh. The skyline sparkled like a sea of stars. Do you remember what I told you on our first date? Jonathan asked, turning to face her. You told me a lot of things. I told you that I had been alone for a long time. That I had convinced myself I did not need anyone. But that was a lie. He reached into his pocket. The truth is, I needed someone. I needed someone who could see past the surface. Someone who could look at my scars and see strength instead of weakness. Someone who could stand beside me on the worst night of my life and make me feel like I could face anything. He pulled out a small velvet box. Amara's breath caught in her throat. I needed you, Amara. And I need you for the rest of my life. He opened the box. Inside was a diamond ring that caught the light and threw tiny rainbows across the terrace. I know we have only been together for a few months. I know this is fast. But I have never been more certain of anything. You're my best friend. My partner. My home. And I want to spend every day of the rest of my life making you as happy as you have made me. He took a deep breath. Amara Johnson, will you marry me? Amara looked at the man kneeling before her. The man who had shown her his deepest wounds and trusted her with his heart. The man who had faced his greatest fear and come out stronger. The man who looked at her like she was the most precious thing in the world. Yes, she said, tears streaming down her face. Yes, I will marry you. Jonathan slid the ring onto her finger. Then he stood and pulled her into his arms, kissing her with all the love and joy and relief he had been holding inside. When they finally pulled apart, they were both laughing and crying at the same time. "I love you," he whispered. "I love you too. Forever." 1 month later. The engagement party was held at Rebecca's house. The backyard was decorated with white lights and flowers. Tables were laden with food. Laughter and conversation filled the air. Tyler ran up to Amara with a question that had clearly been burning in his mind. "Does this mean you are going to be my aunt now?" "I guess it does." "Awesome. Can you teach me how to take blood pressure? Uncle Jonathan said you know how to do all kinds of cool medical stuff." "I would love to." Denise and Patricia stood together near the punch bowl, watching the happy couple with satisfaction. "I told you they were perfect for each other," Denise said. "You were right," Patricia admitted. "I have never seen him so happy." Harold and Gloria sat with Rebecca, discussing wedding plans that were already getting out of hand. "Small ceremony," Harold insisted. "Nothing fancy." "Have you met my brother?" Rebecca laughed. "Nothing he does is small." "Then we compromise," Gloria said diplomatically. "Medium-sized. With really good food." Jonathan found Amara standing alone for a moment, looking out at the gathering of family and friends. "What are you thinking about?" he asked, wrapping his arms around her from behind. "I am thinking about how different my life was a few months ago. I was alone. I was tired. I had given up on finding someone who truly understood me. And now—" She turned in his arms to face him. "Now I have everything I ever wanted. A man who loves me. A family who accepts me. A future that feels full of possibility." "Funny," Jonathan said, smiling. "I was thinking the exact same thing." He kissed her softly. "Thank you," he whispered against her lips. "For what?" "For staying. For not walking away. For seeing me." Amara cupped his face in her hands. "I will always see you, Jonathan Pierce. Scars and all. Today. Tomorrow. Forever." And as the sun set over the backyard and their families celebrated around them, Amara and Jonathan held each other close, knowing that the best chapter of their lives was just beginning.